Hi, we're the Lip Talk ladies, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about whether you should or shouldn't stage your property for sale, the benefits of it, and why you would do it, and obviously that is to maximise your sale price. So, Nicole, this is something you would see, with most of your customers. I'm sure they actually ask this question.
Yes, absolutely, Renee. Quite often when I get called in by a vendor, that will be one of their first questions. How does my home present? Do I need extra styling? Could you give me any pointers? So we certainly do address that from the minute I walk into the property. What sort of pointers could I give them? Or do I have somebody who could assist me? So at that point, I certainly, if the home doesn't present to its best, I would be highly recommending that it get styled.
Yeah. And what's the process at that point? Do they contact the stylist themselves, or do you recommend somebody? Do you work with the stylist? How does that all work, Nicole?
I do actually work hand in hand with Meg, who does have her own styling company. So yes, absolutely, because they do ask me questions like which are my preferred suppliers, in this instance a stylist or someone who could assist them stage their home. At that point I would be saying this is the person I would be recommending. Quite often I would be asked further questions like pricing, what does it entail? So at that point I like to direct them to Meg directly so she can answer those questions and she can come in on a private appointment and assist them with the styling.
Yeah.
Right.
So ultimately, what we want to do is work with the real estate agent to make sure that we're partnered and have the client's best interests at heart. Ultimately, the agent instructs a stylist, and Nicole and I have obviously worked together before, and we talk them through the whole process. So the styling can be as little as me going in and doing a consultation with them and just giving them some suggestions on what they can do with their existing furniture, maybe adding to what they've already got. So you might add some soft furnishings, decorative items, and the other side of it might be, in your case, Renee, when we looked at your property, it was just a matter of just going through the property and identifying things that were slightly personal. So you had your blue wall, we depersonalise, and we try and make it so that it presents very neutral. The client then also has the opportunity, if it's a vacant property, which is a lot of my business, where they can bring furniture hire packages into the home. It has to reach a certain standard. So if I go out to that vacant property, it's an ex-rental property, for example, I want to make sure that X, Y, and Z has been done. And some of those things that I might be suggesting to that client is, if it's an ex-rental property, it's going to have lots of picture hooks in the walls. It's going to have, sometimes it's got stickers on the walls. It's got things hanging from the roof. Certain things look a little bit untidy. The carpets might be quite worn. So I would have consulted for that client. I would have gone to them and given them advice on the things that they should do to present that property for the market before I was to put any furniture into that property. So I like to think when I take over the property, it's at a certain state. So we want to make sure that the client maximises on the staging once they've committed to buying a furniture hire package.
And Meg, do you take the client's budget into consideration at that point, or do you ask them at the beginning? When do you ask them about how much they've got put aside to spend?
Okay, so that's a really great question. So 2 years ago, clients would have had to spend X amount of thousands of dollars on a advertising campaign in the newspaper. Now it's more about online. So they have a presence online. They obviously have a marketing budget with their real estate agent. When I talk to a client, I'm saying to them, look, on average, you might spend anywhere between $3,500 to $5,000 on a premium range of furniture package, which is pretty much 90% of our work. On the other 10%, it would be a higher end product. You might be spending anywhere between $5,000 to $10,000. And in that money that they're spending, that replaces any advertising that they previously would have done probably in the newspaper. So that's kind of how we work out where they might be with their budget. And also they have a bit of an idea in mind now, whereas a couple of years ago they didn't really know how much staging costs. But when I talk to them about how much it costs, I say to them, look, on average, you're going to add anywhere between 7.5% to 12.5% onto the asking price of your property.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, so, it's definitely value for money from that perspective. And when we get feedback from clients that have gone through this process, they've met that criteria, we've gone through the fixing up, which could take anywhere from 3 to 6 months in some cases. I might be dealing with that client that far in advance, so they're working towards that. If I'm already engaged with that client, if it's a real estate agent, the thing that I love about working with Nicole is it's all about the client, so we make sure that that property is perfect before we take it to the market.
So you work together then on that?
Yeah,
do you?
we do.
Yes, and we prepare the property for photo shoots and getting it ready. So we sometimes can recommend painting, new carpets. That's all part of the styling process, which Meg is able to offer. Bringing in the furniture, maybe sometimes we get asked questions like, should we add blinds to the property or shutters? Should we upgrade our kitchens, our bathrooms? So we really advise them from the early stages as to what should be done to maximize their final sale price. And to be frank, some owners just don't have style sense, and that's okay. That is why there's a place for somebody like Meg who can come into your property and mix colours, make sure everything blends, textures, fabrics, things like that. Some homeowners have no idea.
Obviously, all of us can see the benefits in staging and styling a home, and obviously the clients have got to outlay money in that first instance. And Nicole, you would actually see the results from that and what they achieve. So
Yes.
how do you genuinely get that across to make your clients see the benefit when they've got to spend that money up front first?
Sometimes you can have pushback because everyone has a budget and we can't do everything when we're advertising a property.
Yeah.
Some clients will see the huge benefits and say, well, this is what I'm prepared to spend. I may cut on certain things. So what I try and recommend up front when I go and see a vendor is I often give them case studies. So I'll show them a property that possibly had their own furniture where no effort was made, and then I'll show them one which is a similar property which was staged, and the difference in pricing and what we were able to achieve as a good result at the end of the day. And that quite often can convince them as to why they should take these steps. So it may cost you, for example, $3,500 or $5,000, but the end result in terms of the final sale price will be quite a lot higher. When someone's walking through a home, they can really experience the journey and the feeling of beautiful furnishings, gorgeous rugs, soft cushions. They'll sit on the furniture and they'll feel at home. If I don't give them that experience, they automatically have a negative feel, a cold feel to the house, which will reflect in their ultimate price, which they will offer. So I have found it really beneficial, and by showing those case studies, it does work.
And like Meg touched on previously, prior we did newspaper advertising, so you're limited by how many photos. Now, digital marketing, everyone can see there's unlimited number of photos. You do your 3D walkthrough, so
Yes.
that presentation, it's your first. It's
I
your first
use the
look.
analogy with my clients, a property makeover costs less than your first price reduction.
Yes.
So if a client uses a styling package for $5,000, just for argument's sake, it's high end, then, how does that affect the price reduction? If an agent comes to a client 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks down the track and says, hey, not really getting much traction on this property, we need to be talking about a price reduction. That vendor already
Yes.
knows that may be potentially coming. So with that analogy that I use, I say to them, would you rather spend $5,000 potentially, or would you rather have that reduction? Which, I mean, Nicole, when does a price reduction get introduced?
And how much as well is
Yes.
the common
Generally within the first 2 weeks, we can really gauge with all the statistics we have access to today. It's not just about feet coming through the door, but it'll be interest online, inquiries, and then of course people coming through the door. So I
Yeah.
always try to narrow it down to two things. It's going to be price or presentation. So if we presented the home really well, and we've done that from the initial start of the campaign, there should be no issues there. Generally, it would be more so pricing at that point, where we would sit down and say, we've had 10 people through the door. This has been the feedback. If we have marketed the home really well, which generally we do from day dot, it would generally come down to pricing.
And usually I would say to clients when I'm talking to them about the spend of staging a home as to whether they do it or whether they don't do it, I do say to them that we will try to work with your budget as much as possible.
Yes.
That means that we don't have to stage the whole house.
Yes.
If they've got a 5-bedroom house with 2 living areas, I might suggest to them, well, hey, we'll do the 2 living areas because they're the most photographed areas, and then we'll maybe do 1 or 2 of the bedrooms. You don't need to do the whole house.
Yes.
It's
Well, we
about
did-
getting that into interest online. And
Exactly.
when we talk about how much we do, what we're trying to say to that client is, if you don't stage your property, bear in mind that a vacant property often looks smaller than a staged property. And I've had comments from clients and vendors so many times on this. They can't believe it when they walk into their small boxy house and they see it staged and they're like, oh my God, it looks
Yeah.
huge.
But also, doesn't it help work out the proportions of, the lounge that you have at home, and will it fit? Well, there's
Yeah,
a 3-bedroom,
yes, yeah.
not a 3-bedroom,
That's
a 3-seater
right.
lounge in
And-
this room,
Yeah.
and it fits really well, so my furniture will fit
Yeah.
into that.
So what I was going to say on that is that if they don't stage a property, the only leverage they have is price. And often then they go, okay, vacant property, high price, staged property, high price. They're always going to get that better result with a staged property than they are leaving it vacant. I mean, think about an RSL home. When was the last time
Yes.
you went into an RSL home and went, oh my God, this house looks amazing? You don't look at the building as such, you're looking at the furnishings.
Yeah.
So you draw that emotional attachment to the client. They fall in love with the furniture, they fall in love with the house. So that's what drives that price then, because you've got more demand, because the results on the internet, because the photos look so good.
Yeah. And we had a perfect example where Meg and I worked hand in hand with an elderly lady in our area. She came to me for advice. I recommended Meg. Meg went through and consulted with her. And at the end of the day, we gave her a few pointers. We said, look, it's a 20-year-old home. Let's replace carpets, let's paint inside, and let's stage the most important areas. So she actually moved out all her furniture, which worked really well. We did the key areas. And we had success. We sold it in the first weekend
Wow.
for one of the highest prices in the area. And that was just for a little
That's amazing.
3-bedroom home.
Wow.
But she listened to us. She worked with us, and she was able to sell her property pretty quickly. So that was a win-win and a good result for
Yeah.
us.
And she
That's great.
trusted us because we both worked together, so we weren't working against each other. Often, I can find if I'm dealing with a vendor initially and they haven't engaged in a real estate agent at that time, I'm working with the vendor trying to get them to a point where it's ready to hand over to a real estate agent. So it's a much better result when the agent and me work hand in hand. The vendor feels so much more warm and cozy about it, and she did, didn't she? She left us
Yes.
both a review, so
Yeah,
it was
great.
great.
Which was
Wow.
good. I think the days of, well, particularly for myself, of just sticking up a signboard outside the property, a few photos, we get it online and we're out of there, those days are over. Vendors are expecting much more from us.
They
Buyers are as well.
Yeah.
There's so much choice. They've got access to so much more today online. They can Google your house, outside, inside. So they really know what it looks like before they've even walked through the door. So for us, when we present to the public, we have one opportunity, and we need to ensure we're giving it its best shot to get top dollar.
What happens, Nicole, though, when you have a client that says they want to do the staging themselves? They think they can style it themselves, they don't need to pay anyone, they've got a really keen eye. What happens in that situation? Have you got any stories there?
I have. Look, we have had some clients who maybe do have a good eye and they really just need to go get a few cushions and a few blankets, and they think it's an easy process and they think they're really good with colours. Most of them are not, to be frank. They really need guidance. They think it's as simple as I'll go to Pillow Talk, I'll go to
This
Kmart.
sounds like me.
Are you talking from
Sounds like
experience?
me.
That's
Right?
exactly
Yeah.
right. And it'll be so easy. I'll do it in my lunch hour. Then they get home and nothing fits and matches. Then you regret it. You've got to take it back, get a refund. So we have had those experiences. And when we actually do the numbers, and you may have had the same experience, quickly you're at $1,000
Just for cushions.
just for
sometimes.
cushions
Ridiculous.
when you could have had the actual stylist come
Exactly.
in, do everything. And that's what a lot of my clients love using Meg services. They step back, she comes into the property with the removalist, they put everything down and they don't have to touch a thing. So it's one thing to bring a few cushions in, it's another thing to bring in a double bed, side tables, paintings. That is really staging a home. So like I said to you, quite often when we actually go down to the final numbers, you'll see it's probably beneficial, like anything, to use an expert in the field.
So
That's what you're
styling's-
paying for.
Styling's a lot more than just putting a few cushions on the lounge,
Yes,
isn't it?
very much so.
Marie, you'd be able to tell your story.
I don't want to.
When you sold your property
Yes,
and you
I-
tried to do it yourself
did
without calling on
try.
your friend.
I know my friend Meg. I can't believe I didn't call her. I'm an idiot. But yeah, I thought I can go to Pillow Talk, or I can't remember where I went, but somewhere like that. And I did that. I spent like $600. Shh, don't tell my husband, on cushions. And I got them home and I put them all out, and they just like Meg just makes it look so easy. So I
Yes.
thought I could do it myself, totally. And then she came over and she's like, "Oh, why did you buy these cushions? They're terrible."
Is that because you liked it,
It's
Marie?
because
Was it
I
your
liked them.
taste?
Yes,
Yeah.
it was my taste,
Yes.
and she's
Yes.
and then she educated me quite quickly that it's not about your taste as the property owner; it's about what will appeal to the the wider audience.
I think
really.
we both talk from experience that
Yeah,
the whole big benefit, not only just your price, is, well, part of that is actually appealing to a wider audience.
that's right.
Yes, and it can be quite confronting when they come through your home
Yeah.
and tell you that beautiful feature wall that you thought was great straight out of a magazine isn't quite going to appeal to everyone. So, as Meg did at our place recently, so it was
Yeah. So what we're trying to achieve is we want the audience to be this many people and not this many people.
Yeah.
So by making it as generic as possible, which is telling our clients and advising them, look, those blue walls or those mustard cushions, they're not everyone's taste. What we need to do is we need to try and broaden that market so that people can see what they like from the photographs, but they're very generic. So as a stylist, what I do with a property is initially we look at all the spaces and how furniture fits into those spaces. So with yours in particular, Marie, it was about using all of your spaces. We moved some furniture
Yeah,
around.
that's right.
We had areas where you didn't have any furniture in your entry. We made that into an entry.
Yeah,
and
I
we,
couldn't
and we
believe
added a
that.
chair and we added a cushion and we added a
Little
rug and we
side
added
table.
a huge
Yeah,
clock.
it was
And
great.
it was an area where we thought from a sales point of view, rather than leaving this completely bare, which is how Marie had lived in it, we make this into an actual room. So we put a reading nook in there and that's how we
But
kind of advertise
I had never
that.
thought to even use that space the way that you did. Honestly, I didn't. And
Yeah.
when you finished with it, it just looked so amazing, and it was usable space.
Yeah,
I loved it.
and very often you have to remember that our job when we go into anyone's house, whether it's a friend's or whether it's one of our listeners, I'm the person that's going to give them very objective advice. So I'm going to look at every individual client's home and I'm going to go, this is your personal space. You're always going to have that opinion of your property. Oh, that doesn't look right there, or that I don't like that room, or this light doesn't work particularly well in there. I don't see that. I see all the positives and how we can turn that into something that's actually going to generate them leads.
And I also think because you are an expert, you also follow a lot of the trends. So what we're finding today is a lot of these home makeover shows have come out. We have The Block.
Yeah.
We have so many other makeover shows, and a lot of our sellers will look at these properties
Yeah.
and expect their homes to look the same. So you need to follow those trends. You need to follow those colors. In fact, the home we did together, the homeowner said to me, I can't believe those are the colors that Meg has picked, because they're not my favorite.
Yeah.
And I had to reassure her and say, well, we're not catering just to your needs. We want to cater to 80% of buyers that are coming through are going to go, wow. And what happened? The first buyer that walked through went, love the colour scheme that has been used. Totally different to the owner who was slightly older. She was retiring, so 65. The person who bought it was in her early 20s. So their tastes were totally different, but she was following the trends which were happening. So that's what's great about you. It's not the owner's personal taste.
Yeah, so just on that point, staging and styling is very different to interior design. They're two different services. So just to explain briefly, a home stager, me, goes into a property and looks at that audience. Okay, how is this house going to appeal to that audience? So we do cleverly make things appeal to those potential buyers. When we're doing interior design exercises, it's about the client. What does the client want? And sometimes people can get a little bit confused with that. So when I talk to anybody when they've initially made contact with me, what do you do, Meg? I'll say to them, well, if you look at our website and you look at everything that you can see from a visual perspective, that's our style, that's what we do. You'll be happy with the job if you like what you've seen. Other stylists might work in a different way. From an interior design perspective, it's more bespoke. We're working to the client's taste. So in that instance, if we were working with Janine, we would be saying, okay, well, what do you like?
Correct.
And that's where the two differ. And I have to explain that and educate my vendors on that, because sometimes that can be slightly confusing, and we have to say to them, rest assured, this is our job, this is what we do. We want to make sure your property appeals to the largest audience, and if you like black and you like red and both those mixed together, which I hate, then
Some people love.
some people love, but that's not going to work from a staging perspective, but more than happy to deal with that from an interior design perspective, because it's about you and what you want.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's good too. Yeah, explain that.
Yeah.
What about, Meg, when we go into a property and we all have photos of our family?
I was
Of
so
our-
upset about this.
Me too.
Our
Me
husbands,
too.
our wedding day, our children. Maybe your husband has a beautiful photo of you above your bed. So sometimes we need to
A nude
address
one,
those potentially.
That's happened.
So what do you do at that point? Because I'm in a situation like that when I go through the property to give advice, and quite often all these paintings or photos are all over the place, and we need to address them. Do we leave them? Do we remove them? Nude photos can sometimes be offensive, or paintings. So how do you handle that process?
Okay, so I guess I obviously started off in Australia as a real estate agent for a very short time. And I used to talk to clients like you, Nicole, and I'd go in and they'd tell me how much they thought their house was worth, and I'd say, okay, well, actually, I think you need to do X, Y, and Z before we get it to that point. Are you prepared to do that? So those discussions might have been, get rid of your naked shots of your wife in your bedroom, get rid of the reptile that's hanging around in your dining room, which has happened.
Yes.
These are real stories. Get rid of those chains that you've got downstairs in the cave.
Oh, Meg, you need to talk about that.
I'll come to that one. So we have it's
It wasn't my home, by the way. So just clarify that first.
And it wasn't mine either.
Or mine.
My husband's not that lucky.
Just to be clear.
You're right.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to get across is sometimes when the agent delivers that kind of information and says, hey, you know, you can't keep your reptile in the kitchen and you can't have the smell of dogs on your carpet, you need to replace them, the client or the vendor gets very defensive.
Yes.
And I found that a lot, like
really?
a
They
lot.
do.
When I go in now in a different capacity, I'm not a real estate agent. I finished that many, many years ago. I do what I do now, and I go in and I say to the client, and I give them honest advice. And sometimes they're a little bit shocked and they're a little bit, but they do take it on board. And I would say probably 9.5 times out of 10, you can look through the reviews on my website, etc., Google. Clients will say, oh my God, Med gave me this advice. I'm so glad I took this advice, and we got the result we wanted.
So are you saying that potential sellers are more inclined to listen to a property stylist rather than a real estate agent when it comes to removing certain
I
interesting
think
objects?
it's more about the fact that I can deliver that information and educate them on those tips because they don't feel it's going to affect them in any way.
Oh, right.
I can walk away from that paid for consultation with that client if they've paid me the fee for that strategy consultation, and I can give them all of my feedback and my professional advice, and I can walk away and they can do whatever they want with it. If a real estate agent is delivering that kind of advice, the client, and this is what I found, Nicole, you can back me up here, what I found is the client would get defensive because they would feel like the agent was actually trying to decrease the price of the house.
Oh.
And that's not the fact at all. We're just trying to help them to get the best price they can. And depersonalizing a home is about making sure that we're taking it back to that generic, neutral base, you know, like we've talked about. It's taking it right back there. So we don't want people to be stopping in the bedroom and looking at the naked picture of your wife on the bedroom wall.
But I like you do actually explain that, because I was quite upset with having to take down all the kids' photos and from school. But you did actually explain why you do it. You don't want them to focus on that and see that cute photo of the family there. You want them to remember the room for what it is and picture themselves in there. So
Yeah, picturing themselves
you don't
in
want
there.
them. You explained that really well, because
Yeah.
I was a bit taken aback thinking about that. I hadn't heard that before, to take down your personal photos. So.
And you imagine, I go into houses where people have lived in their house all their life.
Yes.
So they've got a whole house full of photographs. It's going to take them probably 6 months to get rid of them all, you know, like on a massive
few holes to
scale.
patch there. Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
right.
Yeah.
But I say to them, you know, this was your home, and now this is your asset.
Yes.
And this asset needs to get the best amount of money that we can get you.
That's a
and
good
I'm
way to put it.
advising you that these things are making your property look like your home, and you still want to live in there. You're not actually inviting those vendors in to want to buy it. They feel like they're walking into your home. So it's not just about depersonalizing, which is what a lot of people use. It's about making sure that we invite those new buyers to want to buy your property and see themselves living in there.
And quite
Right.
often as well, we also really have one opportunity to present the property. I have had instances where another agent has tried to sell a property and possibly it wasn't styled or it was vacant, it hasn't sold, it's been on the market 3-4 months, then I've got to pick it up and start the process again. At this point, the vendor's tired. They've had to open the property for 4 months. They haven't had a good result. They've been paying the mortgage possibly, and they want to just move on, and we've got to start again.
Yeah.
With, well, if we had have done this 6 months ago, we would have had that best shot up front.
Yeah.
So it is good from the go-get to sit down and say, this is what I recommend for us to get top dollar, and you come in straight away.
Yeah.
So Meg, let's go back to that story that you had about the caves and the chains. Can you tell us a little bit about that one?
Okay. Is this an X-rated program or?
Maybe tone it down slightly.
Okay. So back to the depersonalizing. I visited a property with a real estate agent who wanted me to go in and have a look at staging the property. A beautiful property, let me tell you. It would have been in the region of $2.5 to $3 million. I go into the property, I'm looking at some of the existing furniture, taking photographs, and the real estate agent takes me into the master bedroom. So in the master bedroom, there was an array of DVDs on the floor with lots of covers on them. And those covers were women in chains, there was men bent over,
Oh, dear.
on all fours, and they were all out for me to see. And I'm a very naive young lady, and I was like, oh my God, where do I look? I don't even know what to do here. And the agent and I were having a bit of a laugh, because obviously she'd been in there many times before. And she did tell me that it was a very active home. It was a rental property.
That word.
Right.
That describes it. How did you
Lots
actually deal with it with the vendor? Did you actually?
Was the vendor there?
No, the vendor
thank
wasn't
God.
there. And that wasn't my realm at that point because the agent was involved. So thankfully, it was a case of the agent and I working together. I'm supplying her with a quote, which I did. She was dealing with the client, but she wanted to show me this additional space that was in the property. So we go in through this very dark timber door, big lock and key, like something you'd see out of Wizard of Oz.
Oh, gosh.
And I walk in and there is
Wizard of Oz and
a
chains.
cave. It was a cave, fully kitted out with...
Is Christian Grey in there?
Ooh.
Was he?
I still haven't watched that film.
Oh, Meg, where have you been?
It's not for my eyes. So I walk in, I'm like, oh my God. And the agent's looking at me and she's going, well, have you seen anything like this before, Meg? And I'm like, I have never seen anything like this before.
What was in there?
So there's chains on the walls. There's I don't even know what you call them, but it looked like something out of a X-rated movie.
How do you style that?
I don't.
tell.
I
hide the key.
honestly have never felt so. I must have been blushing because I was just blown away by this space that existed in this $2.5 to $3 million home that was being rented out, obviously for the purpose of making movies in this particular area. And there was condoms on the floor, and it was So I don't think I need to kind of elaborate on what I saw. But talking about depersonalising, just make sure
Get
you
rid of all
take
your
all of
chains
those
and
things
whips.
away because nobody needs to see those, and certainly not on the open homes.
So you don't think it's going to appeal to a wide audience that's listening to us today?
Potentially,
No.
yes.
Oh, God.
Well, in all seriousness, of bringing it back in line, we've talked today about the benefits of styling. So I think you've really told us that of the small outlay you have to make up front. It's going to stop you hopefully having a price reduction pretty early on. So hopefully we can see, and you've outlined all of those benefits there, and trying to maximise that price, which is what you really want to do and what your purpose is there.
In summary, I would highly recommend using a stylist like Meg. It's very beneficial, and it certainly has assisted me with the sale of properties. A side note, I do have plenty of husbands who come to me and always say that their wives are the best stylists on earth. They can style the home, they're very good at it. Please don't do it. Give Meg a call. It just helps me with my job, and it gives a nice independent look onto the property.
Thank you so much for listening to episode 3 of our podcast. We hope that you found it beneficial, and don't forget to like and share our page, and also to subscribe if you want to hear more interesting stories with or without the chains. Bye for now.
Woo!